Access control lists, or ACLs in Iconik, allow admins to control exactly who can access, edit, and share media with a high degree of granularity. With ACLs, you can ensure content remains secure and is accessible only to the right people. ACLs can be applied to any object in Iconik. An object could be an individual asset, a collection, a metadata view, or even a storage location. ACLs define exactly who can interact with these objects and what they can do with them via 4 possible levels of access. Read allows people to view the object. Write allows people to modify the object. Delete means people can remove the object from Iconik. And edit access means people can adjust the ACLs on that object. Iconik uses 2 systems to manage ACLs. Teams control who can access content, and role groups control what actions users can perform on that content. Together, teams and role groups give you complete control over your media compliance and security. Let's walk through how this works. When you first create an Iconik domain, you'll be prompted to create your first team. This helps Iconik tailor the experience to your workflow and nomenclature from step 1. A team is essentially a group of users who share access to the same content. Think of it as your department, workgroup, or project team. And this first team is the foundation of your access control structure. Everything you upload or create from this point forward in Iconik automatically inherits this primary team's access permissions, which means the colleagues in that team can see and work with what you create unless you revoke the permission. When a user is added to additional teams, those team memberships can expand what content that person can see and work with from other users and uploaders, depending on how your teams are managed. Let's see this in action. Let's say we're working with a new collection for our upcoming campaign materials and we only want specific teams to have access to this content. To set access permissions, we'll open the Access Control menu and select Add Access. We can add permissions on an individual user basis or on a team basis. For this collection, let's give our external contractor Beatrix and our marketing squad read and write access. They need this access to see and work with the content as they're not part of the existing campaign operations team. Now, let's also add our freelancers team, but give them only read access so they can view the assets but not modify them. Now, anyone who logs into Iconik who isn't part of the campaign operations, marketing squad, or freelancers teams and who isn't Chris or Beatrix will not be able to see this collection or any of the assets it contains. Furthermore, only Chris and the campaign operations teams have full edit and delete capabilities on this collection. The other teams can only view, upload, download, and collaborate on the collection. So, if someone logs into Iconik and they're not these people or part of these teams, they won't see the object in Iconik, in this case a collection of assets. They won't have the right level of access because they haven't been added to the ACL. Iconik offers granular control over permissions, but there's no need to manage every detail manually if you don't want to. With propagation in collections, you can set permissions at a root level, ensuring access flows automatically to everything beneath it. Let's add a new ACL for our West Coast team that applies ACL propagation on this collection. Now, any asset added to this collection will automatically inherit these specific access rights. Let's demonstrate this by adding a new asset to the collection. You can see here that this asset only has permissions for our power user and our primary team, campaign operations, since we uploaded the asset without adding it to a collection. Let's see what happens when we add it to our autumn campaign collection. Now, let's refresh this asset and check the ACLs again. Because the asset is now part of the collection where an ACL with propagation was enabled, the appropriate permissions have been automatically applied. This approach automates permissions. All you need to do is manage the collection. Add assets to the collection to grant access, or remove them to revoke it. Let's remove the asset from the collection. You can see that the propagated permissions are removed as well. Remember, we're just showing access control on the collection and asset level here, but access control can be applied in many different areas in Iconik. Here you can see the Teams admin UI, where you can manage the users applied to your teams. You can also update general settings, such as setting the panels or default sections the team members will always see when viewing the search page or a specific asset, as well as asset management settings, such as designating storage for manual uploads or setting required metadata and associated fields when a user in the team uploads content. Now, let's take a look at role groups. While teams control who can see what, role groups control what actions users can take in Iconik. It's useful to note upfront that role groups are optional. If you don't use any role groups at all, users will simply have the full set of permissions for their Iconik user type, such as Power, Standard, or Browse. And many organizations run Iconik perfectly well using just teams. However, role groups are there when you need finer control over what each user can actually do in your system. Let's create a role group called Content Reviewers for people we only want to have limited permissions for content review and approval, even if they can access lots of content throughout the Iconik domain. When you create a new role group, it starts completely empty. No permissions are enabled by default. You can then selectively turn on the capabilities you want the role group to have. For our content reviewers, we'll only enable the following: core functionality for basic navigation, the ability to organize content into collections, and collaboration features like comments and approvals. Now, when we add users to this role group, they'll gain these specific capabilities. But again, here's the key. Adding someone to a role group doesn't change what they can access. That's still controlled by teams. Role groups only determine what actions users can perform with the content they already have access to through their teams. In this case, Alan, Ellie, and Ian might have Teams access to all content in Iconik, but they can still only search assets, view them, organize them, and review them. They won't be able to do anything else with those assets. This separation means access and capabilities are independent, which is important because team memberships alone don't always reflect what someone should be able to do with content. For example, you might have an executive who's part of multiple teams and can see content across the entire organization, but you assign them to the content reviewers group so they can only review and approve, not view billing details or dive into the administration of things. Their broad team access gets them visibility, but the role group prevents accidental modifications. Role groups let you apply these more nuanced and subtle access needs that can differ widely from company to company. The beauty of Iconik is that it provides this level of granularity, allowing you to configure access workflows as needed. If you want to manage teams or role groups access on a per user level, you can do so via the Users panel in the Admin section. From here, you can review each individual user to see which teams and role groups they've been assigned, making it easy to audit and adjust access on a user-by-user basis. Remember, ACLs aren't just for collections or assets. They can be applied to metadata views, storage locations, export destinations, and many other places in Iconik. With teams controlling access and role groups controlling capabilities, you have complete, granular control over who can see and work with your media in Iconik, keeping your content protected and meeting your compliance, governance, and security requirements.